My name is Lisa Chen, and I'm a 35-year-old software engineer with 12 years of experience in artificial intelligence and machine learning. What most people don't know is that I hold 7 patents in AI optimization and have been quietly building one of the most innovative tech portfolios in the industry. My family, however, still sees me as the freelancer who works from her home office. It all started 3 months ago when my younger brother Jake called me, excitement bubbling in his voice. "Lisa, you have to meet my new business partner, Richard Blackstone. He's got connections everywhere, and we're about to launch something huge." Jake had always been the golden child in our family. While I spent my 20s buried in code and research, he schmoes his way through business school and landed a job at a prestigious consulting firm. When he decided to start his own company, everyone assumed he'd inherited the family's business genes. "What kind of business?" I asked, genuinely curious. Jake had always been better at talking than executing. "Tech solutions for healthcare systems. Richard has contacts at 3 major hospital chains, and they're ready to buy. We just need the right product." That should have been my first red flag. Jake knew about as much about technology as I knew about medieval poetry. But family loyalty made me ignore my instincts. "I'd love to help if you need any technical consultation," I offered. "Actually, that's perfect. Can you come to our office next week? Richard wants to meet you, and we could use some expert advice." The following Tuesday, I drove to their sleek downtown office. The space screamed startup success: glass walls, modern furniture, and motivational quotes painted on exposed brick. Richard Blackstone was exactly what I expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of firm handshake that lingered too long. "So you're Jake's sister, the computer person," he said with a patronizing smile. "Jake tells me you do some freelance work." "Some freelance work." I bit my tongue and smiled politely. "I specialize in AI applications for data optimization." Right. "Well, we're working on something much bigger here. Enterprise-level solutions." Over the next hour, they outlined their vision: a comprehensive AI system that would revolutionize hospital data management, patient flow optimization, and predictive analytics for medical emergencies. It was ambitious, complex, and exactly the kind of system I'd been developing prototypes for over the past 2 years. "The thing is," Jake said, glancing nervously at Richard, "we need to move fast. Richard's contacts won't wait forever, and the market window is closing." "What do you need from me?" I asked, though I was already formulating solutions in my head. Richard leaned back in his chair. "Honestly, we need someone who can handle the technical side while we focus on business development and sales. Think of it as a consulting gig. A consulting gig for a system that would likely be worth millions." Despite my reservations, I agreed to help. Jake was family, and I genuinely wanted to see him succeed. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked 18-hour days, developing algorithms, creating user interfaces, and building the core architecture for their healthcare AI system. Every few days, I'd update them on progress. Richard would nod along, asking surface-level questions that revealed his complete lack of technical understanding. Jake, meanwhile, focused entirely on potential client meetings and revenue projections. "This is incredible work, Lisa," Jake said during one of our progress meetings. "You're really making this happen." I should have been flattered, but something in his tone bothered me. There was a distance there, like he was already separating himself from the technical details. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening. I'd been struggling with a particularly complex algorithm for predicting patient readmission rates when suddenly, everything clicked. The solution was elegant, innovative, and unlike anything currently on the market. I'd essentially created a system that could save hospitals millions while significantly improving patient outcomes. I called Jake immediately. "I've got it. The core system is complete, and it's better than anything we initially discussed." "That's amazing. Can you present it to Richard tomorrow? He's got potential investors coming in next week." The next morning, I arrived at their office with my laptop, prototypes, and detailed documentation. I prepared a comprehensive presentation showing not just what the system could do, but the innovative approaches I'd used to solve problems that had stumped larger development teams. Richard was there with 2 men in expensive suits, the potential investors Jake had mentioned. My brother sat at the head of the conference table, looking more nervous than excited. "Gentlemen," Richard began, "I'd like you to meet Jake's sister, Lisa. She's been helping us with some of the technical implementation. Helping with implementation. As if I hadn't built the entire system from scratch. I launched into my presentation, walking them through the system architecture, the predictive algorithms, and the potential applications. The investors were clearly impressed, asking detailed questions about scalability, security protocols, and market differentiation. "This is revolutionary," one of them said. "The readmission prediction algorithm alone could be worth tens of millions." "How did you develop the core optimization engine?" the other asked. "The approach is completely novel." I explained the mathematical principles behind my innovations, the months of research that had led to the breakthrough, and the unique problem-solving methodologies I'd employed. As I spoke, I noticed Richard's expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. "Well," Richard interrupted, "Lisa has been very helpful in executing our vision. The real innovation, of course, comes from understanding the market needs and business applications." The investors looked skeptical. "With respect, Mr. Blackstone, this isn't about market research. These are fundamental algorithmic innovations. Who actually developed the core intellectual property?" That's when Richard made his fatal mistake. He stood up, straightening his tie with the kind of arrogance that comes from years of taking credit for other people's work. "Listen, gentlemen, freelancers don't understand real business. They're implementers, not innovators. Lisa here is very good at coding what we tell her to code, but the strategic thinking, the real value creation, that comes from business professionals like Jake and myself." The room went silent. Jake stared at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. The investors exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their sudden lack of confidence in Richard's leadership. I quietly gathered my documents, shut my laptop, and stood up. "Thank you for your time," I said calmly. "I think we're done here." "Lisa, wait!" Jake started, but I was already walking toward the door. "The technical documentation and source code will be removed from your systems by end of business today," I said without turning around. "Good luck with your business venture." I heard Richard calling after me, something about contracts and obligations, but I kept walking. In the elevator, my hand shook slightly as I pulled out my phone and called my intellectual property attorney. "Michael, it's Lisa. We need to talk." Immediately. What Richard and my brother didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Every algorithm, every innovation, every breakthrough was meticulously recorded, time-stamped, and backed up to my secure servers. More importantly, I'd been filing provisional patents for my major innovations for the past 2 years, long before I'd ever agreed to help Jake. Over the next 2 weeks, my attorney and I built an airtight case. The evidence was overwhelming. Development logs showing my work, patent applications predating my involvement with their company, and email records proving that I developed the core technologies independently. Meanwhile, Jake called me repeatedly. I let most calls go to voicemail, but eventually answered one evening while I was cooking dinner. "Lisa, please. We can work this out." Richard was just trying to impress the investors. By claiming credit for 2 years of my research and innovation, he didn't mean it like that. You know how business guys talk. I stirred my pasta sauce, considering my response. "Jake, did you know that the core algorithm you're trying to sell is already patented? Filed 8 months ago." Silence on the other end. "Did you know that the optimization engine is protected under 3 separate patents, all in my name?" "Lisa, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that without my explicit permission, you can't legally use any of the technology you're trying to sell to investors." More silence then. "But we're family. Family doesn't steal from family, Jake." I hung up and continued cooking. My phone buzzed with text messages for the next hour, but I ignored them all. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Within a month, we were in federal court for an emergency injunction hearing. Richard had hired an expensive law firm, but they were fighting an uphill battle against documented evidence and clear patent protections. I sat in the plaintiff section, watching Richard's attorney struggle to explain why his client should be allowed to commercialize technology he clearly hadn't developed. Jake sat behind the defendant's table, looking miserable in his one good suit. "Your Honor," my attorney argued, "the defendant has attempted to claim ownership of innovations that are not only clearly documented as my client's work, but are also protected by existing patents. This isn't a business dispute, it's attempted theft of intellectual property." Richard's lawyer tried to argue that I'd been working as a contractor, that my innovations were work for hire. But we had the receipts, email chains showing I developed the core technologies independently, patent filings predating any agreement with their company, and Richard's own recorded statements dismissing my contributions as mere implementation. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, listened patiently to both sides. Then she reviewed the evidence. "Mr. Blackstone," she said finally, "your attorney argues that Ms. Chen was hired to implement your vision. However, the evidence shows that the core innovations in question were developed by Ms. Chen independently over a period of 2 years and are protected by patents filed in her name months before she began working with your company." Richard whispered frantically to his lawyer, but the judge continued. "Furthermore, the court has reviewed recordings of meetings where you explicitly dismissed Ms. Chen's contributions as mere implementation by someone who doesn't understand real business. You cannot simultaneously claim that her work is worthless and that you own the rights to commercialize it." The gavel came down with finality. The plaintiff owns all intellectual property rights to these innovations. The defendants are permanently enjoined from using, selling, or licensing any technology based on Ms. Chen's patented work. Richard's face went through several shades of red and purple. Jake looked like he might be sick, but the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, given the clear evidence of attempted misappropriation, the court awards damages in the amount of $2.3 million, representing the estimated value of the licensing deals the defendants attempted to negotiate using the plaintiff's technology. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Richard's expensive lawyers packed their briefcases with the efficiency of people who knew when they'd lost completely. As we filed out of the courtroom, Jake approached me hesitantly. "Lisa, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I looked at my younger brother, this person I tried so hard to help succeed. You should have, Jake. But more than that, you should have remembered that family doesn't try to steal from family. What happens now? Now, you find a new line of work, and you learn the difference between having ideas and being able to execute them." 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a real office, in a building I owned, with 12 employees working on the next generation of healthcare AI solutions. My patents had attracted interest from major tech companies, and licensing deals were bringing in more money than I'd ever imagined possible. Jake had found work at a mid-level consulting firm. He'd called once to congratulate me on a feature article in Tech Innovation Weekly, but our conversation was awkward and brief. Some relationships, once broken, can't be fully repaired. Richard Blackstone's consulting company had folded within 3 months of the court decision. Last I heard, he was working in insurance sales, though I couldn't confirm that rumor. My favorite moment came 8 months after the trial, when I received a call from one of the investors who'd been in that original meeting. "Miss Chen, this is David Morrison from Morrison Capital. We were impressed by your presentation last year, and we'd like to discuss funding opportunities for your company. I remember you, Mr. Morrison. You were there when Mr. Blackstone explained that freelancers don't understand real business." A pause. "Yes. Well, we've since realized that Mr. Blackstone's assessment was inaccurate. Your innovations speak for themselves." "They do indeed," I agreed. "Let's schedule a meeting." As I hung up the phone and looked around my bustling office, I couldn't help but smile. Richard had been right about one thing. I really didn't understand his version of real business. The version where you take credit for other people's work, dismiss the people who actually create value, and assume that smooth talking can substitute for genuine innovation. But I understood my version of real business perfectly, the version where ideas backed by execution, protected by law, and driven by actual expertise win in the end. And in my version, freelancers who don't understand real business sometimes end up owning the entire industry. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard had spent so much time dismissing my contributions that he'd never bothered to check whether those contributions were legally protected. His arrogance had cost him everything, while my quiet competence had built an empire. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or immediate. Sometimes it's simply being so good at what you do that when people try to steal from you, the law itself becomes your weapon.